Summer 1945. The Europe Day Victory Parade on Red Square in Moscow. Before the Kremlin Palace and Soviet leaders, the legendary Russian troops were celebrating their triumph over Nazi Germany. As it's done in the Roman Empire, the soldiers hurled flags of the defeated at the winner's feet. The man who defeated Adolf Hitler, Generalissimo Joseph Stalin. After 20 years in power, the master of the USSR stands at the pinnacle of glory. Here is what a poet wrote. Stalin, you are higher than the high celestial spaces, and only your thoughts are greater than you. Your spirit, Stalin, is brighter than the sun. We refer to him as the little father of the people. Everywhere in the world, he represents hope for a more just society. He is the hero of hundreds of millions of people. In France, we too sing his praises. With all our hearts, we declare our passionate love for Stalin, and we pledge him our unshakable confidence. Stalin! Stalin! While this man is one of the greatest villains in history, he killed his own people with infinite brutality. We shall destroy without pity anyone who threatens with facts or even by thought the unity of the state. He established the gulag and enslaved 18 million individuals. You must lop off destructive party members to save it of disease and infection. He cynically engineered famines which resulted in 7 million deaths. Death solves all problems. No people, no problems. He lost his family to his own authority. A real Bolshevik shouldn't have a family. We are going to recount to you the marvelous tale of this son of a petty craftsman who turned out to be one of the strongest personalities on earth. We are going to recount to you how this man, who proclaimed to bring happiness to his people, turned out to be, by virtue of megalomania and fanaticism, one of the most lethal dictators man has ever known. The year 1924 is when everything began. We are near Moscow, in the midst of Russian winter. Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution, just passed away. It's one of the very first films where Stalin gets the lead role. He's walking behind the chef's coffin with Soviet officials. Stalin is 46 years old. He's Secretary General of the Communist Party, a fairly wiped-out position. Among his fellow revolutionaries, no one can envision that he will be the one to take over from the great Lenin. They are unaware that a decade later, he will have nearly all of them arrested and killed. Among them, no one yet knows who actually is Joseph Stalin. To his fellow comrades, he is nothing. One of them averred, "Stalin is the greatest mediocrity of our party." Another corroborated, "We don't fear Stalin. The moment he will wish to mount his high horse, we shall kill him." For long, Stalin has been disguising his true intentions. His birth name is Iosif Djugashvili. He was born in 1878 during the time of the Tsars, a monarchical system on the basis of inequality and obedience to the monarchs. Growing up in poverty, an abusive and drunkard father, he was raised among Orthodox monks. Very early he became part of the struggle against the Tsar and adopted the name Stalin, the man of steel. In 1917, he was part of the great Bolshevik Revolution with Lenin that toppled the Tsar, eliminated privileges, and vested authority in the people. Behind Lenin's shadow, he was merely biding his time for the chance to seize power. Lenin's death was the opportunity. In 1924, he managed, by party maneuvers, to exclude the biggest personality of the time, Trotsky, before banishing him to Kazakhstan. No one anticipated it, but only a few weeks later, Stalin assumed power. He won't let it go again. He decided to stay here, in the Kremlin fortress, the old Tsar's palace. It's from there that he will govern the USSR, the Soviet Socialists' Union of Republics, the biggest country of the world, with only a few individuals who will blindly obey him for some 30 years. He wanted to do more, much more than Lenin. He wanted to make history, and his mind was made up. We Bolsheviks, we are a special breed. The others have no value. They are not worth a dime. Do not doubt it, comrades. To the working class, I am ready to devote all my strength and every drop of my blood. Stalin needed a fresh start from the past. He suddenly erased the remnants of old Russia that the revolution had left behind. He enacted a decree stating that religion is contrary to the people's interests. Throughout the nation, he took down the old Orthodox icons before they were destroyed. Instead of the previous system, he had this revolutionary plan to construct communism, a utopia, a healthy and happy society, with neither rich nor poor. A society in which all commodities are shared, where all have equal opportunities at birth, where health and education are available to all. For the Soviet Union, he has boundless ambition. Old Russia has always been defeated because of its delay. Slowing down the pace means to lag behind, and the stragglers will be defeated. We in the Soviet Union, we don't want to be defeated anymore. He initiated humic construction projects, skyscrapers, subway, railroads, dams, power plants, to modernize Russia in whole force so that she could become a paradise for workers. A world in which unemployment is unknown, and in which every worker can provide a good life for his family. A world in which Stalin is at the first place. We, the forebearers of the great nation, party fighters, ever prepared, we thank you, Stalin, for the joy that you are bringing into our nation. Stalin is the communist leader. His portrait is everywhere, in factories, on trains, in every classroom, and even in the dining rooms. He has to be perfect because he represents the perfection of communism. He personally revised his official biography himself, with millions sold. On the copies, he included a handwritten remark. Add the sentence, "Stalin is the greatest captain of all times and people." In fact, the actual Stalin is more typical. He's a mere 5'3" tall. He's getting his wedge heel shoes on. He usually stands on a tiny wooden board that increases his height. See this remarkable picture. It's his actual face. His complexion is pocky due to the fact that he contracted smallpox at the age of 7. But bizarre enough, in public he possessed immaculate skin. The Kremlin's new master is an enigma to his citizens. He keeps himself confined in his office and jealously conceals his personal life. These are the sole photos remaining of his wife, Nadezhda. She was an ex-wrestling comrade, 22 years his junior. There were 2 children from Nadezhda by him, Vasily and Svetlana. He paid little attention to them, but on his little girl, he showed a genuine interest. "I miss you, Dad. I don't care if the whole world hates me. If Dad asks me to go to the moon, I will do it." Some of the photographs present us with Stalin in his leisure moments, during summer holidays when he's taking his deputies to the Black Sea on party villas. Yekaterina Voroshilova, wife of one of his lieutenants, recalls that Stalin adored nature excursions. He would take us there and we'd sit beside a river. We'd make a fire, grill meat, while laughing and singing. It really was the good times. The bad news is stacking up, though, for Stalin from the early days. His politics were disappointing. Stalin jeopardized his everyday life by multiplying major industrial projects. The Russian population was increasing, but no facilities for housing were provided. Families moved in together in requisitioned apartments and filled all the tiny spaces. The quality of living was declining.
As evidence, these secretly filmed videos on Moscow streets are one of the few evidences of poverty during the early 1930s. It's this affluent English lady, Lady Mountbatten, who while on a visit made these recordings with her own camera. Everywhere I noticed symptoms of malnutrition. I heard that this man who sorts through garbage bins was an old aristocrat, and that this one was a celebrated pedagogue at the time of the czars. Here is a small boy all by himself and who asked me for assistance. Store windows are nearly bare. Above all, the lines are interminable. In the line, they are left standing all day, unable to make a purchase. In the USSR, the communist dream has already collapsed, but in the Kremlin, Stalin is not willing to listen. Failure does not exist for him. The system was wrong because their policy was being sabotaged. He was on the lookout for culprits among economic officials, like the financial desk, Brukhanov, that he finds incompetent and who a collaborator pulled in an embarrassing situation. Marginal notes by Stalin. For all his past and present sins, hang Brukhanov from the testicles. If they stand up, consider it acquitted by the court. If they break, throw them into the river. Stalin was not joking. In 1930, he developed a technique to identify the guilty parties, the political trial. The accused were scientists, engineers, high-ranking officials. They were all skilled, but Stalin charged them with sabotaging the Soviet economy. Rise up. Stalin himself is not present in the discussions, but he decided to make one of his disciples, Andrei Vyshinsky, the judge. He instructed him with the verdicts to be handed down: death. I declare the sitting of the Special Court of the Government of the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics open. If the trial had to look credible in the public eye, it was essential that the defendants confess their fault. They were tortured for weeks and didn't have much of a choice. How do I put this? I have already stated this in my previous statement, that my counter-revolutionary sentiments towards Soviet dominance never really abandoned me. I fully accept this. I accept that I deserve the worst punishment. For the prosecutor, it's now a walk in the park. The government condemns you and demand that the defendants be executed. After a few days of deliberation, the judge delivered the verdict. He was aware that Stalin was watching him perform, therefore certain emotion. Kalinkinkov Ivan Andreevich, pursuant to Articles 583, 584, 586, and 58011 of the USSR Code, the Soviet Union imposes upon you the maximum sentence, being shot with all your assets being confiscated. Their punishment will be reduced to 10 years in jail. But the message is loud and clear. Anybody who stands against Stalin will be mercilessly crushed, along with their beloved ones as well. Stalin is getting cruel. His affair with his oldest son, Yakov, who was born from a first marriage, grew cold. He tried to commit suicide recently. His father was not sympathetic. He couldn't even shoot on target. I can't have something in common with him. Stalin's too was in bad shape. His wife, Nadezhda, is delicate. She was always scolded by her husband. At one altercation, when Stalin verbally abused her, she lost control. You're an executioner. That's what you are. You're tormenting your own son, your wife, the Russian people. It's impossible to live with you. Nadezhda has no strength after 14 years being with Stalin. One evening, in winter, following another fight at an official reception in the Kremlin, Nadezhda went back to her room and took her own life with a revolver bullet to the heart. The truth will take 60 years to be revealed. Russians were informed that Nadezhda had died of appendicitis because, as communist leaders believed, suicide is tantamount to treason. Even her friend Polina Molotov denounced it. Nadezhda was in the wrong. She deserted Stalin at a time when it was so hard. Stalin didn't remain at the funeral. He was heartbroken. Oh, Nadezhda, Nadezhda, when needed of you, your children and I. She left me like an enemy. She crippled me. She destroyed my life. In the USSR, things will never be the same again. Stalin was cruel.
From now on, he will be ruthless. He began by going after peasants who wouldn't part with their land to the government and become part of the kolkhozels, these giant cooperatives in which all is communal, party-run. To destroy them, Stalin dispatched police officials into the countryside to ransack the fields and seize the harvest. Their task is to suffocate families who oppose his policies. Torture, rape, killings, nothing could prevent them. One of those policemen is Lev Kapelev. I participated in these expeditions, sounding out the earth to uncover the hideaways. I raked the pantries bare while struggling not to listen, the children's sobs and the cries of women. Anything was permitted. Demolition, lies, stealing. The end justified the means. Our goal was the worldwide victory of communism. 1933, the year of the outcome. Requisitions by Stalin resulted in a tragedy in Ukraine. One of the wealthiest parts of Europe was already ravaged by famine in the 1920s by Lenin. But the killing went unimaginable this time. The peasants had nothing to eat anymore. A father wrote to his son in Moscow, "My dear boy, I write to inform you that your mother is dead. She starved to death after months of agony. I have little time left myself." Some members of the party on site did not understand that this famine is known and even wanted by Stalin. They protested. Is Comrade Stalin, a member of the Politburo, is he aware of what's going on in Ukraine? Otherwise, let me hint you, a train full of corpses just arrived in Kiev after picking up bodies along the way. In Moscow, Stalin wishes to annihilate the Ukrainians who continued to defy his policy. He forbade starving peasants from going out of their villages to reach the large cities. In good faith, he sentenced to death 5 million individuals, including half children. It is one of the largest slaughters of the century. Simultaneously, the French deputy Édouard Herriot made his way to Ukraine at the invitation of the Soviet government. I make fervent wishes for the welfare of the Russian people and hope my visit will be beneficial for their happiness and the peace of the people. The Frenchman and the delegation with whom he came traveled to Ukraine by train. He is satisfied with the journey. I crossed Ukraine. I can tell you that I saw it like a garden in full yield. There are only kolkhoz gardens, irrigated and admirable crops. While it is said that Ukraine is being devastated by famine, allow me to shrug my shoulders. How did the Frenchman miss millions of killings? In reality, the streets were swept before he arrived. The workers he encountered were extras. We brought in provisions. Édouard Herriot was deceived by propaganda. In Moscow, Stalin's dictatorship is full of deception. He assigned a task to journalists and filmmakers. They are not obliged to depict the world as it is, but as it must be. The harvest is poor. We have brilliant peasants captured in superb fields. Industrial performance is poor. We release triumphant press releases with fabricated numbers. We create such heroes as this well-known miner, Alexei Stakhanov. In a contest, he shattered the record of productivity by digging out 14 times more coal than anyone else. This is an entirely fabricated story. The party fabricated it, yet it served to exploit the Soviets. Indeed, the USSR is not anymore a huge police state. Stalin's men are everywhere. They run the entire company. They were given a frightening command. They will not only arrest the suspects, but also deport them. Everywhere, women, children, and men, thousands are assembled and driven to unknown places. A child recalls, "How long did the journey take? I don't know. 7 died from starvation in the cart. When we arrived in Tomsk, they let us out and unloaded the dead bodies. Children, youngsters, and elderly persons. They went to the gulag, Soviet work camps. They were actual concentration camps, established by Stalin years before they were known in Germany. These were all revolution enemies, at least officially. In reality, common citizens, prominent individuals, religious people who have nothing to blame but do not conform to the work of the regime. They are blended with ordinary law and presence. We call that re-education in the party, and we're proud of it. Here, the deviating spirits should be brought back to the right path. Actually, the prisoners are made slaves. In the far north camps, the temperature drops sometimes down to -50 degrees. A prisoner wrote, "It's risky to cease moving. I can't cease kneading my toes and tightening my fists. The gesture of touching a metal instrument with bare hands can tear your skin off. Maria Yov is fed up. She's a political prisoner. Our unit is made up of intellectuals. But among these scarecrows, who will identify violinists, harpists, scientists? We live in a chronic state of dazement and stupefaction. On August 2, 1933, something demonstrated the evil and ridiculousness of the system. On that day, the Stalin Canal was inaugurating. 200 kilometers of waterways linking from the White to the Baltic Sea. With pickaxes alone, 300,000 prisoners excavated this canal. Exceptionally, Stalin decided to act. He wished to create the canal that would be named after him, the emblem of his achievement. Theoretically, it was a technical achievement. The construction time of the Panama Canal was reduced. Truly, it's a new tragedy. 30,000 prisoners, or 1 in 10, were killed during construction. They died in vain. It is difficult to believe, but in order to catch up with the time constraints imposed by Stalin, the channel was not excavated quite deep. Most boats will never be able to borrow it.
Overseas, we are less likely to see the terror inflicted by the Stalinist regime. The majority of Western media recycled the disinformation of propaganda to burlesque. Meanwhile, the gulag is spreading everywhere. Here is how the French press describe a Tsar's jail in Siberia. Long ago, Tsar revolutionaries were imprisoned there. Today, the Soviet government has decided to assign another purpose to this place. Breeding rabbits in large numbers will now be carried out there under the supervision of a special scientific institute. Drunk on propaganda, each year communist delegations from around the globe, and particularly from France, journeyed to Moscow to welcome the little father of the peoples. Regardless of Stalin's atrocities, high-profile rallies were soon doubling up, such as that of French writer Louis Aragon, not only in endorsing the Gulag, but openly extolling its virtues. The proletariat will carry out this historic work, man rehabilitating man. We are at a point in the history of humanity that resembles in the process of development from ape to man. Hip, 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 hooray! Hip, 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 hooray for the Bolshevik Party and their leader, Stalin. How are we to account for such dazzlement? In the Moscow Congress of 1935, Maurice Thorez, the head of the Communist Party, accounted for the fact that Stalin returned to the workers their pride. Listen, comrades. For one moment, it so occurred that communist workers didn't know what to do in factories, didn't know how to guard themselves against such accusations or such blames. There used to be a period when, due to withering sectarianism, they lacked the capacity to react. There was no longer unity between them and the large majority of workers. Now they are proud. They are speaking, reacting, presenting their arguments. They are recognized in factories. They claim to be the communists. They are the ones who created the United Front and the Popular Front. We are sure of victory, because the helm of our ship is in the firm hands of our dear and great Stalin. Blinded by his communist ideal, the Frenchman did not see or did not want to realize that Stalin had moved on a long time ago, and that his only purpose was now to consolidate his power. Stalin chose to eliminate the whole generation that was still casting a shadow on him. Recall Lenin's funeral in 1924. The majority of those who bore his coffin alongside Stalin would perish. Kamenev and Zinoviev, murdered. Tomsky, suicided. Rykov, assassinated. Radek, killed. Stalin enjoys martyrizing loved ones. Choose your victim carefully. Prepare for the coup. Relentlessly carry out your revenge and then go to bed. There is nothing sweeter than this in the world. He attacked his dearest ally in the struggle, his beloved Bukharin, in 1938. He's been my friend for 15 years. And he had the audacity to contradict him several times. He was an enemy in his sight. In preparation for the fall of the great figure of the regime, it began the steamroller propaganda. Nationwide, we believe that these conspiracies were zealously devoted by the capitalists' agents, fascist dogs, none other than Bukharin and his gang. Comrades, what I have to say was verified by Stalin. Our nation is surrounded by enemies wishing to annihilate our country and our people. Death to these enemies, death to these bloodsuckers. While here at Lubyanka, the secret police headquarters, Bukharin is being tortured. In a letter, he begs his old friend Stalin, "I am dictating this letter to you, which is most likely the last. My heart weeps at the possibility that you might think I am guilty. I am willing to crawl on my knees and beg you to let me abandon this trial. If death is what awaits me, I ask you in the name of all you care for to not let me get shot. I want to take poison. I ask you." It is actually death that Bukharin will face. On March 2, 1938, in a crowded room of members of the political police, his trial began. It's just a formality. Our people desire one thing. We must annihilate these vermin. Bukharin is in the defendant's box, but nothing remains. No photograph of him. He was not deemed submissive enough for propaganda purposes. He will be executed, and his family extradited. The purges are now going across all families in the Soviet Union, without exception. Stalin noticed enemies everywhere. He became completely paranoid. To the suspected persons who are going against his power, he welcomed whistleblowing. In every village, you were prepared to accuse your neighbor and even your parents. A small boy accused. "As a pioneer, I have to tell you this. My father was behaving in a counter-revolutionary manner, and I am appealing to you not as a son, but as a pioneer, to be severe with my father." Stalin had a henchman, Nikolai Joseph, who was called Dwarf as he was 5'5" tall. He was the head of the secret police. "I may be short, but my hands are powerful. These are Stalin's hands. We are attacking on a massive scale against the enemy. There will be innocent victims. When you cut down a wood, chips fly off." Stalin had quotas for executions. As evidence, this horrific document. On the top line, the Republic of the USSR. Here is Azerbaijan, followed by 3 columns of numbers. One for executions, one for deportations, and a final column for total. No names. It's party officers' job to identify the victims to complete the quotas. A random document in the political police archives. Name, Siglorov. Heritage, a wooden house, 8 square meters. A cow, 4 sheep, 2 pigs. Indictment, Siglorov is hostile to Soviet power. He declared that Stalin killed many people, but we can't discuss it or else you'll be sent to camp for 25 years. Verdict, shoot Siglorov and seize all his property. He's referred to as the Great Terror. Since 1937, Joseph shoots an average of 1,000 individuals every day. Strike, destroy, without sorting. Better too far than not far enough. Amid terror, however, life went on as if nothing significant had occurred. They're performing Swan Lake by Tchaikovsky at the Bolshoi Theater. It's Stalin's favorite ballet. He never missed attending. Every night after the concert, he went back to the Kremlin to sign the orders of execution that had been drawn up for him. Occasionally, he made comments. "Tighten the screw on this man. Beat him, time and again. The more the screw is tightened, the better." At last, the terror recoiled upon the police chief himself. Joseph is charged with treason. He is beaten, shot, and even removed from official photographs. By 1938, Stalin had disposed of all his real and imagined enemies.
They were gradually replaced by a new generation of activists who owe him everything. They're the nomenklatura, the new men, the things Stalin had dreamed of, and the people Stalin could rely upon. They divided up the possessions of terror victims, and they profited from apartments left empty. On March 17, 1938, 4 days since the Bukharin trial had concluded, numerous families visited Moscow airfield. Whether activists, officials, they were all there to receive a Russian aircraft that linked Russia to America via the North Pole. The reception of pilot Chanalov, who is here in the center, is an event. Stalin chose to make him a new Soviet hero.
That day, in Moscow's streets, Chkalov declared his love to the great leader. "I will die for Stalin. If we have to give him lungs, we will give Stalin our lungs. And if we have to give him heart, we will give Stalin heart." Stalin is hardly dreaming that a Western threat is about to challenge his authority. In Germany, the Nazi Party has ruled for more than 5 years now. He believes in superiority of the Germanic race. As a leader, Chancellor Adolf Hitler, like Stalin, has formed a dictatorial government. He had already occupied Austria. He desired to capture all its neighboring nations, including France. But above all, he fantasized about invading the Soviet Union and to annex Soviet lands for the German people. The mission of the Nazi movement is to destroy Judeo-Bolshevism. Destroying Russia will give the German people a vital space the masters need to eat. My ambition is to be the man who will break Marxism. Stalin finally got an idea of the threat, but too late. The USSR was unprepared for war. Its arms were antiquated. Its officers were destroyed. In the terror, he had 20,000 Soviet officers of the General Staff around him at this time, shot. In this 1934 film, there remain only a handful of antiquated generals who know nothing about contemporary warfare, like the dashing Budionni. "You won't win me over." The moment the war erupts, all will cry out, "Change the cavalry!" To compensate for the delay, Stalin requires time. In August 1939, he managed to get along with Ribbentrop, Hitler's ambassador in Moscow. The two giants sign a non-aggression pact just a few days before they initiate the World War. An unnatural pact which has a lot of hidden motives, but which provides Stalin with relief. It's all just a game about who gets the other one up their sleeve. You'll see, Russia will succeed to avoid war with Germany for a while longer. 1 week later, September 1st, 1939, the German army invaded Poland. It's the beginning of the Second World War. Within a few weeks, the Nazis defeated the Polish army and achieved a huge victory, the first out of many. 8 months afterward, in May 1940, Hitler struck from the west and overran France within less than 2 months. He imposed his law on the half of Europe. Military occupation, persecutions on race and political repression. Meanwhile, Stalin did not just sit around idle. In support of the pact with Hitler, he conquered some more land. During the winter of 1941, he still believes he is secure from a war with Germany. But this time, he's mistaken. It's then that Hitler chose to make realize his long-held dream: crush the Soviet Union. It's the Barbarossa Plan, one of history's largest military operations. Hitler intended to overwhelm the Soviet army and to capture Moscow within a few weeks. Already in spring, the German army stands ready to fight on the frontier. Soviet generals witnessed troop mobilization on the spot. They raised an alarm and requested permission to send soldiers out. But in the Kremlin, Stalin, equally paranoid as before, feared a trap. He replies to them, "You have a big head but a small brain. Germany will never stand alone in the war against Russia."
June 16, 1941. One of the spies reported that an attack was going to happen, but Stalin insisted, "He's a disinformer, he should go to hell." June 21st, the night before the Great Russian Offensive, a German deserter crossed the border and informed him that the attack would be at dawn. Stalin's decision was, shoot him. June 22, 1941, the invasion began. 3 million German troops invaded the USSR. From the initial hours, they annihilated 1,000 aircraft on the ground. The steamroller Germany had entered the war. A woman was pinned in a village. Thousands of our soldiers are roaming around helplessly, all dispersed everywhere. Our commanders are fleeing. They are abandoning us to perish. Symbol of defeat. Stalin's oldest son, Yakov, has been taken prisoner while fleeing in disguise as a peasant. In the background, Russia is in shock. To comprehend, the people are rushing to grab the newspapers. Everybody is holding their breath for Stalin's response, but it's not forthcoming. Muscovites, such as young Gena, are curious. We're stuck to the radio. We're waiting for Stalin's speech. We must hear his voice, but he is quiet. It's Molotov, his deputy, who is speaking. Everyone is listening. We are informed that we're in the midst of war, but where is Stalin? Stalin sits behind the Kremlin walls. It is destroyed. All is lost. Lenin established our state, and we destroyed everything. He left us an awesome heritage, and we destroyed it. Due to his repeated blunders, Stalin is directly guilty of the debacle himself, but he refuses to accept it. As ever, he's searching for scapegoats. These thousands of troops laying down their arms are traitors. Their families will be sent into exile. As regards the deserters, he dispatched to the front special units in charge of monitoring soldiers, and he issued them specific instructions. In case of panic and withdrawal, have them shot immediately, including those who will panic and the cowards. Within a few weeks, Stalin leapt from one poor decision to another. In Ukraine, Stalin forbade his generals from evacuating Kiev. Nazis arrested 500,000 soldiers 5 days later. It was the largest arrest ever made by an army. In October 1941, 4 months since the beginning of the Barbarossa offensive, Hitler nearly won his wager. The German army was just a few miles from Moscow. The capital is being bombed daily. The inhabitants went into hiding in the subway. Author Viktor Kravchenko pointed this out in his diary. Moscow makes you feel that you are dying. Panic is reigning, and it allows the most fantastical sounds to flow about. Some said that a coup had taken place in the Kremlin, and that Stalin was arrested.
In fact, Stalin too found shelter in the subway. Here he is when all his followers were asking him to leave the capital and make a decision which would alter everything. Despite the risk, he chose to stay in Moscow. Within a couple of hours, he will speak to his soldiers. November 7th, 8 in the morning. Regiments poured into the Red Square amidst a snowstorm in response to Stalin's appeal. The tanks rolled into the city straight from the front lines with full arms. The Germans could attack at any moment, but Stalin's speech mobilized the troops. Male and female comrades, the entire world is waiting for us and is watching us, waiting for us to trample down the masses of looters and German invaders who perished during the German invasion. Glory to our country, to liberty, to independence, forwards to victory under Lenin's banner. Within a few days, the Russian war had stabilized in front of Moscow. It's only 10 months later, in 1942, during the summer, that one of the greatest battles of the century will take place. We are in Stalingrad. This was the turning point of the Second World War.
The Germans, unsuccessful in bringing Moscow down, wanted to take this crossing point towards Caspian Sea oil. They controlled 90% of the city, but they still had a few hundred miles to conquer. In front of them, the Soviets resisted relentlessly. Andrei Kozyainov, the Russian gunner, was among them. We heard footsteps and the breathing of German soldiers. I can't see them through the smoke. We shoot by instinct, by ear. My head is buzzing. 2 million people will be killed in Stalingrad. Stalin, for the first time since the war broke out, did not intervene himself, but left it to his chief of staff, General Zhukov, to complete the job. Zhukov had a strategy. He wanted to encircle the Germans. They had just captured in the city. November 19, 1942. At 7 o'clock in the morning, 1,400 tanks, more than 1,000 aircraft, and 1 million Soviet troops were storming on the flanks of the Nazi forces. These pictures, taken after the battle, during a reenactment, depict two Russian armies meeting. Several weeks later, 300,000 German troops, encircled, inadequately armed and starving, surrendered along with their commander, Marshal von Paulus. It is the first time a Nazi marshal is taken alive. To Stalin, it is a miracle. In the world's eyes, he is the first to beat Adolf Hitler, and he will initiate within the next 2 years the glorious counterattack Russian troops against Germany. Contrary to his sins, in spite of his alliance in 1939 with Hitler, Stalin became inescapable. In Moscow, while General de Gaulle was visiting, then subsequently a few months later at Yalta, Allies all went to meet Great Stalin. Britain Churchill raised a toast. Is there anything more dear to us than the life of Stalin to each and every one of us? I hope very much the people of the Soviet Union would be able to keep their marshal for a long time. Churchill was aware that since the Stalingrad victory, the USSR was growing into a superpower. He was aware that after months of a counterattack, the Red Army would soon be in Berlin. It is spring 1945. Stalin's followers, these awful weapons, were bombing the capital of Germany. Stalin made a decision to take revenge for Stalingrad and annihilate Berlin. Against such firepower, Germany resigned by surrendering on 8 May 1945. 2 months afterwards, Generalissimo Stalin had arrived in the capital of Germany to commemorate his triumph. In this world-renowned propaganda film, we had received Hitler's conqueror like a messiah. As a matter of fact, it's a fiction, wherein the Stalin role was done by a doppelganger. This brilliant arrival never transpired. Stalin feared flying, and unlike these pictures, he detested crowds. Comrades, we are today celebrating the great victory on fascist Germany. The real Stalin took an armored train to Potsdam, in the suburbs of Berlin, where 5,000 police officers were mobilized for his arrival. He was obsessed with the attacks. If he agreed to leave his country for the first time in 30 years, it's because the opportunity was worth it. He had appointments around the negotiating table with his American and British allies. Ever since the Yalta Conference, he demanded half of the European territory. That is, all the countries his army had freed from the grip of the war. Stalin's demand was granted by the Allies. Soviet rule in Eastern Europe was about to begin. It will continue almost half a century. For the Russians, the cost of winning is too high. The war has destroyed 70,000 villages and taken the lives of 26 million individuals. In summer 1945, the troops were coming back home and preparing to be reunited with their families. It's a soldier who speaks. They're crying when the train comes. People are screaming. They're running. The men kiss their wives. They hug the children they never saw grow up. They proudly display their decorations and their wounds. They all long for peace and silence after so much pain. The atrocities of Stalin are nothing but stale memories for them. They are mistaken. Stalin is at the height of power. It has been more than 20 years since he has been ruling over the Soviet Union. In honor of his triumph, we organized a pompous spectacle for him, with thousands of supporting actors. Even the American General Eisenhower joined. But Stalin appears to be nowhere. His health is weak. He suffers from memory loss. He suffered several heart attacks. Most importantly, he is a bachelor. He lost his son Yakov, who was taken prisoner by the Germans during the war. It is reported that Yakov attempted to escape by jumping over barbed wires. Stalin declined to trade him for Marshal von Paulus, as Hitler suggested. If I had traded Yakov, what would have said the party fathers, whose children were taken prisoners as well? If I had done this, I would not have been called Stalin. His private life was disastrous. He no longer sees his second son, the pilot Vasily, who became an alcoholic and who continues to fly over Red Square in his plane. More paranoid than ever, Stalin even became angry with Svetlana, his favorite daughter, now a young woman. He didn't understand her desire to have a good time. He didn't approve of her love affairs, especially the one with Jewish film director Alexei Kapler, who was sent to the gulag by him.
He did not approve of her marriage either to Grigory Morozov, a Jew, too. Through the years, Hitler's Victor turned anti-Semitic. All the former generation was infested by Zionism, and now they expect young people to join. As soon as the war ended, Stalin resumed the purges based on his mood and his insanity. With 2 million prisoners, many of them Jews, the gulag had never been so crowded. In France, even communists who had battled the Nazis in the war continue to worship Stalin. In 1949, he was celebrating his 70th birthday. Presents were being sent from all over to the Kremlin. So did tremolos, the voice behind the man, the poet Paul Eluard described. In this tiny workshop in Belleville, the workers spent 300 hours making with care a present for Stalin. Their present was a miniature. In spite of the facts, the horrors of the Stalinist regime remained muted. We cannot forget what happened to us when we were under Nazi occupation. There is a need to realize that one of our colleagues was imprisoned. A son of another man ended up in the underground fight. The wife and the daughter of our chief were deported. Without the Stalingrad victory, our village of Grigny would have remained under Nazi occupation, along with all of France and Europe. So all of us, Grigny peasants, we send greetings on your birthday and long life to Generalissimo Stalin, who liberated us through his triumph. We pray for long life to a wise leader, to the working people, to Stalin, the peaceman. On his birthday, the peaceman brought together in Moscow the world communist leadership, particularly the Chinese, Mao Zedong. But a small 12-year-old girl was taking center stage. Her name was Natalia. She was Postgreshebichev's daughter, the secretary of Stalin. She was greatly privileged to recite a poem to the supreme leader. Live close to us, dear one. Lead us through your lights, for the Soviet regime to flourish and get stronger every day. The hall applauded this moving scene, but the little girl did not know of a cruel twist. Several years ago, Stalin had got her mother killed. At 70, the little father of peoples felt more irreplaceable than ever. What would you do without me? You are blind. You are little cats. You don't see the enemy. The country will fall because you can't recognize the enemy. March 4, 1953. This time, Stalin just died. No information in the papers. We won't know yet. Stalin suffered alone in his room for 2 days, with no one to save him. Not even his doctors, who were afraid of making a wrong decision and as such ending up being shot.
His corpse was placed in the Hall of Columns, where he had condemned his friends in the Moscow trials. Among the party members, these sentiments are genuine. A teacher struggled to envision life without Stalin. What will become of us now? How shall we survive? What will become of the country? On Red Square, officials were delivering their speeches as if nothing unusual had happened. Our guide and master, the greatest of all human geniuses, has completed his magnificent journey. But away from the cameras, following the morning instructions, thousands of Stalin's victims had secretly begun to perk up. At Vorkuta camp, in the depths of North Russia, the deportees knelt on their knees when they heard the news. May his soul go to hell. Thank God. Today the man with the mustache went to hell. During his reign, the man who promised heaven on earth had caused the death of 20 million people.